All right, so the third episode of The Lord of the Rings of Power on Amazon. I have to admit, I'm not as big of a fan of this episode as the first two. The first two I felt like were appropriately slow. And I guess what I mean by that is, first of all, when it comes to Tolkien and his world that he creates, I don't care if it's a little slow. Slow is not a bad thing. We have plenty of high-octane, action-packed fucking this and that to watch all the time anyways. Give me a slow, slightly more, I don't know, early 20th century. Tolkien took his time with The Lord of the Rings, and I'm okay if shows based on his writing, his worlds, are a little slower. So I didn't mind that, and I loved the production values, and I thought, well, all these sort of maybe underdeveloped characters, and maybe this is just the result of kind of trying to introduce a lot all at once. So I'm going to be patient with it, and I'm going to enjoy it for what it is and what it does right, which is, phenomenal music, beautiful production, just a Lord of the Rings feeling. And I especially like the Harfoots, who really brought me right into Middle-earth. And there was lots of mystery, and I love the dwarves, and there was just lots I loved about the first two episodes. Episode 3, on the other hand, I'm a little more tepid about. It had some cool stuff. Numenor looks beautiful. Again, we got some pretty cool sequences with the Harfoots, and we got to see a lot more of Arondir and, all these elves who have been captured by orcs. And I have to say, the orcs are amazing. I love the orcs in this show. They're just gorgeous, right? I mean, they're hideous, but they're gorgeous. They're not CGI. They are just the makeup, the production, the way they introduced the orcs in in the series premiere, the second episode, when Bronwyn and Theo have to fight that orc. That's an awesome scene. That one single orc is scarier than almost all the orcs we've seen in any fantasy ever. And in this episode, we get Arondir and his elven compatriots and some other people who have been captured by orcs. And we get to see a lot more orcs, and they're just really cool. I really love the orcs. And then, so we get 3 plot lines, basically. We get Numenor with Galadriel and Halbrand, who are rescued by Elendil. That just sounds wrong, but it's Elendil. They're rescued by him, taken on a ship, taken back to Numenor, where they're kind of greeted coolly. The Numenorians are not big fans of elves at this point. There's been a rift. So Galadriel is also not very diplomatic. She's like, I'm going home. I don't care what you say. Give me a ship or I'm going to take one. And they're like, yeah, no, I don't think so. You can't boss us around in our own home, even if you are some legendary elf. Only Elendil and his people are sort of elf friends or whatever. I guess that's what his name means, is elf friend. But the queen, Muriel, and her elder cousin Elfarazon, they are not so friendly. So they are kept kind of as guests / prisoners in the city. Halbrand seems cool with this. He seems like he wants to start over, start a new life. He's very, very interested in the Forge, which is another hint that possibly he could be Sauron. Who himself is, a ring maker, a smith, a blacksmith of sorts. But I think it's a little too on the nose. I don't think he's actually Sauron. This storyline kind of, I have to say, I hate it. I hate it because I'm so annoyed by everyone calling Galadriel a Mary Sue and all this stuff, but I'm not a huge fan of Galadriel in this show. Not because she's different, not because she's a warrior, not because of any of that, but because, I don't know, the casting seems off and the way they're portraying her. There's this whole scene with Elendil where he's like, I have a daughter and a son, and they're both kind of rebellious, and they like to do what they want to do, and it doesn't matter what I tell them, and they're so, fiery, and, you have the same eyes as them. It's like, dude, Elendil, you're 50 years old. She's 6,000 years old. You don't get to talk down to her. At this point in Galadriel's life, I know they're trying to portray her as this fiery, younger version of Galadriel, but she's like one of the oldest living creatures in Middle Earth at this point. It just doesn't work. Like the message here is, I know you can't just make a show for Tolkien fanatics, or even for like semi-fanatics like me. I'm not even a fanatic. I'm not like a lore master. I really like and have enjoyed Tolkien since 4th grade when I first read The Lord of the Rings. But one thing I know is that Galadriel is an ancient badass, and you don't like serve your show well by having Elendil talk down to her. Then they go to this Hall of Law, and there's this whole sequence, the slow motion horse riding sequence, which I guess is designed to show that Morfydd Clark has expressions that aren't just angry or surprised, because they have her like grinning in slow motion for like 20 seconds while she rides this horse, and it's super awkward. Like, there are some beautiful shots as they ride these horses across the beach, but it's just so much slow motion. It's very awkward and bad. Anyways, so she finds out at the Hall of Law also some history on Halbrand, and he turns out to be like the king of the Southlands. It's all a little contrived and rushed and weird. I liked a lot more Halbrand himself. He's fascinated with the forge. He wants to be a smith, but the smiths say, like, you've got to be part of the guild. You got to earn your way in before you can work here. So he goes and he steals like a guild coin thing, whatever holds their tunics up. And then the dudes who he stole from come and find him in the alley, and they're going to beat him up, but he goes fucking crazy, and he just kicks everyone's ass. It's a great scene, actually. Like, he breaks the dude's arm by, like, putting it on the corner of a door jamb and, like, breaking this guy's arm, and then he bashes another dude's head into the wall, like a brick wall. It's very violent, and I really enjoyed it. Clearly, this guy has some crazy fighting skills, which, you might have thought, well, maybe because he's Sauron, but also it turns out he's basically like new Aragorn of the bad guys realm. I don't know. In the Harfoot storyline, we have Nori and Poppy and all the rest, and they're having their crazy dance. We learn a couple things. First of all, Nori's dad is a dad and mom. I guess her mom is black, but she's just white. I don't know. Maybe it's her stepmom. I don't know. They're really worried that they're going to be left behind because his ankle is broken or strained really bad. I guess it's not broken because he's walking around. I don't know. He's wounded, and they're worried they're going to be left behind during this migration. And it turns out that they leave people behind when they migrate, because the Harfoots are a brutal and dystopian race of fucking hobbits. They are sort of horrible, and I'm sort of sad by how horrible they are. They just leave people behind who are wounded. It's so messed up. I mean, couldn't they have like a stretcher that they like pull this guy on, or like maybe they could find some goats to pull their carts instead? But they are just kind of cruel people, little people. But I really love Nori. I honestly still think that they should have the first episode should have been mostly focused on the Harfoots. Harfoots? And they should have expanded the story as they went along, rather than kind of like Lord of the Rings, which starts with the hobbits and kind of expands as it goes along, rather than introducing so many different storylines. In any case, Nori she goes and steals something from the head Harfoot. It's like a star chart with the constellation that the stranger drew with fireflies in the premiere, and she brings, in a comic gag moment where she steals it without him noticing, she brings it to the stranger. He accidentally sets it on fire and apparently doesn't know how to put out a fire on a piece of paper and makes a big old mess, and they discover him, and they want to apparently one of their dystopian fucked up laws is that if someone breaks any of their rules, they are decaravaned and excommunicated from the Harfoot culture and society and whatever. But their leader, played by Lenny Henry, I think is his name, Sadik Burrows, I believe is the character's name. He's like, she's young, we'll just let her be. So anyways, they let her and her family continue with them, and the stranger tags along and ends up helping push their cart. And he is also like, friend, I am your friend, but he can only say one word. I'm still very curious who he is. I think it's Gandalf. I really do. We'll never hear his name Gandalf in the show probably, but I think he is the starry Gandalf who visits in the Second Age, but then leaves again. But then his affection for the hobbits is sort of developed here in this story, and he helps the Harfoots like find a safe place. Anyways, the final and third and last storyline is all about Arondir, who's captured by the orcs. We don't see Bronwyn, we don't see Elrond, we don't see Durin, we don't see any of these characters, but we do see Arondir. He is taken by the orcs to like this work camp where he discovers that the other elves from his platoon have also been captured along with a bunch of other people. They're all being made to dig like giant trenches. There's some conflict when the orcs basically tell them to cut down a tree, and none of the elves want to because they love trees. Trees are amazing and they don't want to cut it down. But one of the orcs cuts his like partner's throat open, which is another pretty violent thing for a family TV show. Although there's not nearly as much blood as you'd actually see if someone like cut somebody's throat like that. Eventually, the elves rebel, and there's a big fight between the elves and the orcs. They find out, they discover that the orcs really don't like sunlight. It, like burns their skin, yada yada yada. They try to escape, but ultimately the rebellion is quashed. Arondir is taken captive, and at the very end of the episode, what looks to be an elf with long black hair walks through the crowd of orcs who are all chanting Adar, Adar, and this is the name of the episode, Adar, which is apparently who this figure is, this dark elf, whatever, this bad, evil elf. Could it be Sauron? Possibly. I'm thinking it's probably not. I'm thinking that it's like a lieutenant of Sauron's who's like running this particular project, this Southlands takeover, whatever the hell they're doing. We see just a blurred version of his face. We see a gauntlet that does look like Sauron's like TV gauntlet. But we just don't know who he is. So those are the three storylines. We've got the Numenor, Galadriel, Halbrand, Elendil storyline, the Harfoot, Nori, Poppy, Stranger storyline, and the more action-packed elves fighting orcs, Arondir storyline. I have to say I did like the like elven fighting with chains. They're chained, but they do like jump kicks where the chains spring out and like whack the orcs in the face. Many elves die. I think we do have an issue with like how powerful are elves versus orcs. Like one elf could take, as we saw with Legolas, can take down a lot of orcs, but here they seem a little weak. Overall, I think the focus on Galadriel is hurting the show. I think that the casting and the portrayal of Galadriel in general, while not a Mary Sue, is still kind of weak. I don't love it. I very much prefer Elrond and Arondir and some of these other characters. As far as female characters go, I like Disa and Bronwyn more than Galadriel. Galadriel just feels like this emphasis point, but also the weakest link in this show, which is unfortunate, because I think she's going to be a really big part of it. And I don't think it's that the actress is bad. I just don't think she's like the right actress for this role. And I don't think that the character itself is right for this show. It's a problem. It's a problem. I still think overall I'm really enjoying the show. But this episode, despite a beautifully realized Numenor, which is super cool to see, I still feel like it's the cheapest and least good episode so far. It has me a little worried about where the show is going. And I'm definitely not like as impressed or as excited as I was based on the first two episodes. So let me know what you think. I know we've disagreed on some stuff. I don't think it's very woke. I do share your concerns on it being just sort of created out of nothing. Like this does feel still like expensive fan fiction. So we'll see. Thanks for watching. Peace.